Morning, everyone. You are in the House Committee on General and Housing, and it is Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. January 16th, 2026. We have with us today the august chair of the Human Services Committee, Teresa Wood, for two purposes. One is to introduce 565, which is her bill, just a quick introduction.
I forgot about that.
And I think that's where we should start.
Okay,
And then also because there's a larger reason, which is I've felt that I came to realize in a way that we depended entirely on the Human Services Committee to address all the homeless and sort of, in a lot of ways, a lot of the housing subsidy issues. And that's fine, but I didn't think it was good that we didn't understand them or didn't know about them. So I asked Teresa to come in and literally talk to us about the regime overall. Today, it turns out she has less time than we thought. So if, with your permission, we'll start today, but then reschedule you for a little more time.
absolutely. If you feel like that's necessary, Chair, your committee wants to have me back, I'm more than willing to come back at any time.
Great. Well, why don't you introduce yourself and let's introduce 565.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Wood. I represent Bolton, Hillsborough, Huntington, and Waterbury. I live in Waterbury, and I am the chair of the House Human Services Committee. Thank you for having me. The bill, which the chair just spoke of, came about as a result of meeting with a constituent, which often some of our best work does. And she expressed, she is a landlord in Burlington. So she has familiarity with sort of the landlord tenant issues. So her daughter, in her 20s, purchased her first home, a mobile home that was already sitting in a park in Waterbury. And the young woman has a excellent credit history. She works two jobs. She's really responsible. She started the interaction with the park owner about paying her rent, and he said, well, you'll be required to pay 12 months in advance. And they said, well, that can't be. There must be some rule against that, or there must be the reasonableness of this made no sense. And, in her research, she learned that no, unless you have like the city of Burlington or city of Winooski or Bradford, unless there's a local housing authority that has some sort of ordinance about it, smaller towns across the state really don't. And she wondered if there was any legislative opportunity to have a discussion about what they were considering, and I agreed, to be an unfair practice, particularly in light of the fact that it was she felt like she was being singled out because of her age. There wasn't any sort of uniformity to this park owner's. He didn't say 12 months to everybody. And he hadn't checked her credit history, which he would have found was an excellent credit history. And so I said I would, bring forth this bill. So that's what you have. It's fairly simple. And I understand that there's another housing bill that has some, sort of similar language in it. And I appreciate the committee's attention to talking about the issue. I don't care what bill or anything it ends up in. And I've talked to some landlords in the building, and they were supportive of the concept of there needs to be some sort of statewide guardrail, or guardrail is not the right word, but statewide standard. That's the word I'm looking for. Some statewide standard for that. The people who talked to me said that they did have some questions, not necessarily concerns, but questions about how the interest-bearing account portions of the bill would actually play out. How would that how would, a relatively, somebody who owns like maybe one park that's got 100 different individuals in there, it doesn't turn over all the time, but how would that play out? So I said, the committee, I'm sure will take up, if they take up the bill, they will, start to dig into some of those questions. So pretty straightforward, and that's it.
Great,
Happy to take any questions if anybody has any questions.
please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for this. I'm reading on the bottom of page 3 into 4 that you've carved out an exception for those landowners that may have already retained. Can you tell us a little bit about
That
so
was Ledge Council's way of, there was some thought about making it retroactive.
Mhm.
It was, I'm gonna defer to Ledge Council. That was the language that they came up with that I think they would probably be better able to explain, to be honest with you.
I have a suspicion that they just don't want to be forcing everybody to disgorge money that they'd already collected.
Right, I
And
think
how
it's,
much do you disgorge and all of that?
right.
Okay,
yeah.
oh, I see the very next, sorry, I had not read.
Yeah.
The very next measure language says that they would have a set amount of time after which they would have to deposit any excess of 3 months into an account. Okay, thank you.
So now let's move on. Yeah.
I had a question.
Yes, Debbie.
I don't know how to raise my hand on the screen,
Yeah,
so
well,
I
I'll
just
watch. I'll
interrupt.
watch and someone will alert me if I don't see you.
Well, I mean, I do own property in a mobile home park. And we do
Throat was up.
oh darn it.
You want to turn off your camera and just
Oh.
have the sound?
You're breaking up, so
Yeah,
there you
let
go.
me, I don't know how to get back there.
Where you're
Let's
back.
see. Anyhow. And we do pay a full month, a full year. But everybody in the park does. Our rent is, we pay the full year.
At the beginning of the year, everyone is asked to pay a full.
But this
year.
is different, Debbie. This one involved the particular case that Teresa
It's
was referring to is that in addition to whatever
Right.
rent they had to pay, they had to put down a security deposit in the amount of 12 months rent.
So that would be like 2 years upfront.
Gotcha. And I was wondering on the interest-bearing account, that's put in the name of the leaseholder.
Is there?
Is that how that's done?
I don't know the mechanics of it, Representative, but I do know that there are other provisions in statute where
Yes.
deposits and such are need to be deposited into an interest-bearing account. So I don't know the mechanics of how it works, but I'm sure that if the committee decides to take that up, we can get testimony about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, shall we begin? Do you have a little
Sure.
time to begin and
Yes.
tell us? Basically, I think it's up to you. I think you should assume that whatever you know needs to be explained. Well, the only thing.
That might be a tall order.
Well, the only thing, I mean, don't assume a lot of.
Don't
knowledge.
assume, okay.
The only thing you should assume is that we had 2 hours almost of hearing on Section 8 yesterday,
Hmm.
resulting in a letter of support for the $5 million proposal. So I think we know a good bit about Section 8, but beyond that, no. Like what's going on with your, H91 and now you have a new
Yeah.
bill and
94.
whatever you want to start.
I'm gonna start off, I think, with the complexity of the Agency of Human Services, sort of at that a basic level. I think that folks probably have a pretty good idea that it's the largest agency in state government. It has thousands upon thousands of employees. located all over the state. They include not only, people hosted in central offices, like in Waterbury, there's a large complex in Waterbury, but in district offices all across the state in your communities. And it is literally for all Vermonters, everything from prenatal services to burial services. So from before death to after death, that is covered in the Agency of Human Services. So you can imagine in our committee, we deal with a wide breadth of issues. And in the House Human Services Committee, we have responsibility for the Department for Children and Families, for the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, and for the Department of Health. The Agency of Human Services also includes the Department of Mental Health, which is under healthcare, the Healthcare Committee. It includes the Department of Vermont Health Access, which is essentially kind of the state's insurer for the Medicaid program. And that is also under the Healthcare Committee. It has an Office of Rate Setting. So the Division of Rate Setting falls under the Department for Vermont Health Access. And things like rate setting is important because that crosses over all of the Agency of Human Services.
But the Department of Health,
Yes,
you guys do,
we do.
not the Healthcare Committee.
It is because, and the reason because of that is it is about the broad expanse of public health. And of course, there is the Division of Substance Use Services. And there's discussion now about whether that should be, combined with the Department of Mental Health, given the co-occurring nature of some of those issues. And so, we had a hearing about that yesterday. And then there's the Department of Corrections, which people might not understand or realize, like, what's the connection with the Department of Corrections? Lots of other states have that in their sort of public safety realm. And Vermont's made a choice because oftentimes people who end up in the correctional system they're not going to stay there forever, most of them. They're going to need to receive supports and services to transition back out into the community. And oftentimes the reasons they end up in the correctional system are because of the lack of the kind of supports and services that could have, maybe prevented that in the beginning. And again, those all being contained within the Agency of Human Services. So we do everything from childcare, from licensing and protection, from funding nursing facilities and residential care homes to home and community-based services, things that, and a lot of Medicaid upstairs, a lot of Medicaid, and a lot of other federal funds as well. We are responsible for child welfare. So when children and youth are placed into the custody of the state, that happens within our committee and in the Department for Children and Families. I mentioned childcare. We're probably all familiar with Office of Economic Opportunity and the General Assistance Program. Those fall within the Department for Children and Families as well. And so there is a myriad of supports and services that actually contribute to the stability of people in their housing situations, and particularly low-income individuals or individuals with disabilities or older Vermonters. And so that is something where our two committees have quite a bit of, intersection, because you're wanting to, assure that our state has adequate housing stock. And we need to assure that the supportive services for people are there so that they can be, safely and appropriately supported if they need that kind of support to maintain their housing.
What is the budget of the parts that, DCF, Dale, DHS, et cetera, that you are kind of in charge of, about how much?
I'll tell you after the governor's budget presentation on Tuesday.
Okay, but it's,
I'll come back with.
but it's in the billions, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, we get involved when you think about housing. Yesterday it hit the news that there's a nursing home closing in Colchester, okay? That is something that obviously is concerning to us. There's, in that particular home, there's 51 individuals who are going to need to be transitioned to someplace else. It's not always easy to find nursing facility services for people. So, you know, that's, you know, we have all different kinds of housing, I guess, is the thing that, you know, when we talk about housing in human services, we're talking about one-on-one kinds of things. Could be a staff department for somebody who has particularly challenging support needs around their behaviors or their medical issues. So it could be with another family. So payments are made to a family to support an individual. It could be in what we call like staff departments, where there's actually sort of shift staffing, but no more than 2 people live there. And then we moved into the license capacity. So at the Division of Licensing and Protection, anything over 3 individuals who are unrelated needs to be licensed. And so
3 and above?
3 and above, yes. So there's all different kinds of housing that we deal with, you know, everything from, I guess, what I would call the most intensive, medically oriented, which is the skilled nursing, to the least intensive, which would be somebody who needs, you know, occasional support, check-ins by case management in their own apartment. And then, you know, rental assistance, which, you know, you hear about here. HUD intersects with you folks and it intersects with us upstairs. And trying to maximize federal resources is one of the things that we do in order to provide as much supportive housing as we can. So I was in appropriations last evening and somebody made a comment that, well, all the money we're investing in housing, you know, we're taking care of the homeless. And I'm like, well, actually, we're not investing money in housing for people of very low income, okay? People who live on SSI alone, people who have, you know, $800 a month to live on. We are not investing the kind of money to make any kind of real difference for that group of people. And yes, there's maybe, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 units in a, you know, a new apartment complex that's being built that might be dedicated to somebody who is, needs more affordable housing with a subsidy, or is currently not being housed. But that's unfortunately nowhere near the number. And we frankly have not ever, since I've been working on this for many years now, had a plan for the Agency of Human Services. How many shelter beds? I forgot about shelters, you know, that's temporary housing. How many shelter beds do we need? Where do we need them? What, you know, how do we know if we're achieving and we're working towards the goal? Because the goal hasn't been set. We don't know what it is. You know, but we continually get requests for more money for shelters. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how to measure our progress. You know, do we need, right now we're about a little over 600 shelter beds. But are they in the right communities? I don't know. Do we have one in Lamoille County? Do we have enough in Lamoille County? We do have some in Lamoille County, but do we have enough? Do we have enough in Brattleboro? Do we have enough in Orange County? Nobody's doing that sort of systemic look and saying, this is where we need to invest. So it's everything from permanent housing to temporary housing to emergency housing. And, you know, we say housing, but it's for the people that our committee has responsibility for, it almost always has to come along with a supportive service of some type. And those supportive services will be different depending upon the person that we're talking about, but we unfortunately see a return to homelessness if the supportive services are not there. And that is just like a revolving door, and that's not something that we want to keep doing, because that is something that we are able to have an impact on, you know, with taking the money that we have right now even and directing it in the places that it needs to go. So it gives you just, I was trying to convey to you the sort of the sense of the depth and breadth and all the different kinds of housing that there are. I would say, you know, this might be surprising to you, but the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living probably provides the most, largest array of different types of housing for people. And they do that obviously through contract with their community provider system. Almost none of this is done, you know, with state staff, with the exception of some emergency stuff at DCF, but almost all of this is done through our community partners, the designated agencies, our recovery centers, our recovery housing folks. In the mental, you know, on the mental health side, there's some housing as well. And you know, we support a lot of single families through the Reach Up program. The Reach Up program, you know, some might consider partially a housing program because it provides financial assistance that people can use to help pay their you know, necessary expenses. And I wanna be clear that the Reach Up program serves very low income individuals, you know, where it's not a goal to be on Reach Up. You know, I think that there are some misconceptions about Reach Up.
Does Reach Up does it provide rental assistance or other services?
It provides financial, it's money. It provides financial assistance. What people receive is based upon a calculation of housing, of food costs, of all of those things. But so it's a calculation that's made based upon the size of your family, where you live. Chittenden County gets a little bit higher amounts. And the cost of services in those areas, you know, when I say services, I mean things like housing or the cost of food, utilities and things like that. I have to point out, however, as a state, we say, we do the calculation and we often base it, so based on outdated information. Okay, so based on information that can be as old as, you know, 10 years old in some cases. And then we say, so we do that calculation, say, this is what we should be providing assistance. And then we do something called a rateable reduction. That's roughly 50%. We say, we're going to give you half of that. And, you know, good luck figuring out the rest.
Does it interface with Section 8?
Yes, the Reach Up families are eligible for Section 8.
Yes. Please.
Right, and so is Reach Up sort of complimentary for like we've been given testimony that the Section 8 vouchers don't tend to cover, even though we say it's 30% of your income, 30% of your income might still leave you very high and dry because it's such a small amount.
If you only
Period,
get
right?
SSI or SSDI and you're a young parent and you have are you looking at me? Oh, I'm sorry. If you're a young parent and you have two small preschool age kids at home, you're probably at home with them, if you're able to be at home with them. So I think some of you may have seen something that the Joint Fiscal Office did. They haven't updated yet. It would require a lot of effort, but a thing called the benefits cliff, you know, the graph that shows these things that are stacked.
Right.
I prefer slope because it's not really a cliff anymore. When we did the childcare bill, it's much more of a slope. And it's not intended to be permanent. You know, these are intended to be assistance to help people to get to a place where they can be self-sufficient. But they are stackable, Representative. Yeah.
Okay. So Reach Up looks at what other things have you gotten to complement with, like, what do you need cash wise
When you're
to
yeah.
reach your basic needs of housing and food?
How many people are on Reach Up?
I don't know. We just had a $2 million reduction in BAA because caseloads are down from what the estimates are. The department uses not state government, they use a contractor to do the estimates. So I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Um,
How about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, when you're looking at those numbers, I'm just curious on, have you seen a increase or change a shift, or increase, decrease, a shift in those numbers based off of the new federal changes and the work requirements and how those things play out? Has that factored in yet, or has that not yet had an impact?
Not yet, because those changes don't go into effect until next fiscal year. So they will impact our deliberations in this building because they impact in FY 27, our state fiscal year 27. So they will have an impact there. And the Appropriations Committee took some testimony about that this week, and it's a lot. I mean, it's and you know, some of those changes are also don't make any sense. So that if you're not going to be eligible for Medicaid and you're working, there's still, the federal government is still saying, well, then, and you can't buy insurance on the exchange. So they're like forcing people to be uninsured, which doesn't make a bit of sense to me. I don't understand that, but that's another whole sort of ball of wax. But we are seeing the, I guess I would say, the anxiety among service providers in the community, the parent-child centers, the community action agencies, the designated agencies around the impacts of that and the ability, or I think that, you know, people are concerned about the capacity of state government to really inform people in ways that are understood clearly about what those changes mean for each person individually. So we do have community partners have gotten together and they have proposals about you know, trying to have folks who will help explain that to people. It's a massive amount of paperwork, massive, that is now has to be done twice a year.
Yeah.
And we'll be spending money, you'll see in the state's budget on Tuesday, we're gonna be spending money adding staff, you know, at the state level because it is essentially doubling the workload. It doesn't make any sense and it's not a cost saving measure other than, you know, purposely intending to uninsure people.
Yeah, one more, thank you. Well, also, so I asked this of Kathleen, and since your committee handles most of these things, I don't know if there's anything that I'm unaware of that maybe I can share with my constituents. I am curious. I have a group of folks who are folks living with disabilities, and they live on a fixed income and are facing rent increases. And so I talk about, we look at housing and all the different types of housing. And what people don't understand is we're not just looking at people who are currently housed and people who are unhoused. There's people who are chronically at risk of being unhoused. And there's also many layers. And those aren't always people who are low income or have disabilities. Those are some people who are working class and work paycheck to paycheck, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm specifically want to talk about the folks that live on fixed incomes and have housing vouchers, and their rent is increased. And it's not a benefits cliff, so to speak, because they're stuck in this place. And I guess Kathleen Burke was in here yesterday and she had mentioned, you know, well, that's why it's a housing choice voucher. They have the choice to move if they can find other things. But I feel like it's sort of a systemic issue of us. It's like sort of systemically induced homelessness if folks are living within a means and they're housed, they're secure, and then all of a sudden they are no longer secure, but nothing has changed for that individual. Like they didn't do anything, it's not anything circumstantial to them. In Agency of Human Service, in your committee, the Human Services Committee, are there things that I should know to be helping my community members?
I don't want to discourage you.
I know. This is the dilemma.
Yes.
This is when we laugh or cry.
Or cry.
Right.
It is, you know, I think sometimes in this building, sometimes in the public, people have a picture of folks who are you know, currently in what we call the General Assistance Emergency Housing Program, you know, the motel program for short, or if you want to, I can't even call it a program because it's not a program, but and in the course of, you know, the transition from COVID to post-COVID, there are countless numbers of working people who, with families, you know, there are close to 1,000 children. Let that sink in Vermont, you know, 1,000 children who are, homeless in this state. Not all of it, but there is a large chunk of those folks who have been, priced out of the rental market. They have 1 or 2 working parents. They've been working successfully. They have been stable. And, you know, essentially their homes, where they've been living, you know, I heard about this just before the session started, more examples of, somebody saying, you know, serving an eviction notice, and they're going to renovate, and then the rent is going to be increased, you know, because that's what the market will bear right now. And these folks are like, they don't know where they're going to go. I had a middle-aged man with a disability, same thing happened to him. And you know, so it is, it's difficult. I don't have any magic bullet. I mean, there is emergency housing assistance for 80 days, unless it's cold weather. Those don't count towards your 80 days. And one of the priority populations is for families with children. But it's a difficult situation.
Is Reach Up recalculate? I mean, if you get, let's say your rent goes up and
No.
Section 8 doesn't cover it, Reach
No.
Up doesn't
No.
take that into account.
No, Reach Up, the only recalculation that happens with Reach Up is if we change the parameters in this building, because it costs more money.
Right.
So if we update the, you know, residential costs that they use, the housing costs, if we update that to 2025, you know, then that would provide an increase, because you know, we would have changed that variable. Or if we said, instead of reducing your benefit by 50%, we're going to only reduce it by 48%
Right, yeah.
or whatever, you know, that, trying to make some progress on that. So
Are there people who are receiving Reach Up who are homeless?
yes,
Yes. Could you just define for us, forgive me, but we're not quite as up as we should on the lingo, designated agency?
sure.
Who designated them and who are they?
Okay, the designated agencies are set in statute, so they have that designation in state law. They are agencies that are designated by now it's 2 departments, it used to be 1 department. So by the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, or in some cases, the Department of Mental Health. So in state statute, they are designated as the sole providers for their region. They're designated for a particular region. Lamoille County, for instance, is for Lamoille County. Washington County Mental Health for Washington County. They're not all as clean as county lines, but that gives you some sense. So there are designation regulations. There's 3 different populations for which you can be designated. For individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities, you're designated to serve those people in your catchment area. For adults with mental health challenges, and for children with mental health challenges. So 2 of the designations occur through the Department of Mental Health. And then the other designation occurs through the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living. And there's regulations that govern that, what you have to have for board of directors, your financial position, all of that kind of stuff. And it's been in the news recently that United Counseling Services in Bennington is on provisional designation right now for developmental disability services with the intent to de-designate. Very serious situation right now.
Because they made mistakes there.
This has been probably at least an 18-month process. It's probably closing in on 2 years would be my guess, because you don't just go from being designated to being de-designated. There's a process, and there's a plan of correction that has to be done, and So the state has evaluated their progress on the plan of correction, cited that it has been insufficient. They've found health and safety issues. So in the designation regulations, there are, many elements that have to be just right for you to maintain your designation. And what's important about designation is that means that every part of the state is covered. Okay, and it means that if you have been designated to serve adults with mental health challenges, you cannot say no if you are if the person lives in your catchment area, okay, and they're requesting to at least have an intake. They still have to work within the funds that are provided by the legislature and the departments, but in developmental disability services, people, if they're eligible, you have to allow them to apply. They have to go through the process. There's funding priorities, so there's different steps. There's no like automatic services, and sometimes there's waiting lists for services. But what it guarantees for those designated agencies is that they are the essentially the sole recipients of a grant agreement with the state for that service area, and they get to bill Medicaid.
I don't want
And I
to,
was gonna say, I got a couple of minutes and then I have to go and we can.
okay, well, it's up to you what you cover. I was just going to say, it'd be interesting to hear about the new housing bill that you've.
Why don't I come back?
Come back for that.
That's a longer conversation.
Okay.
Can I
Go
ask a
ahead,
question then?
please.
So just in spirit of this conversation, and as we prepare to discuss other housing conversations, I feel like this was like a general housing landscape. For framers of the committee and everything, can you help us understand, because I said something yesterday and someone's like, did you just say that? And I said, well, it depends on if they are homeless enough. And I feel like there's people don't understand the definition of what qualifies as being unhoused for you to be able to access benefits. And I think there's this illusion that we have this community of certain demographic of people who fit a certain model and identity, and that those are the people who are unhoused. But there's so many different layers to it. But when you think about that, we're talking about benefits because we're all like, okay, well, where's the money going to go? Is this a good investment? Where should we put this investment? What does it take for someone to qualify for assistance, for emergency housing, for emergency shelter? What levels? Just that's a quick summary that you can probably say on your way out.
Okay, well, so you complicated by adding shelter
Yeah.
to the question. So there's I guess I would call a loosely held network of emergency shelters across the state. Each shelter is privately operated. They set their own priorities. They set their own rules in general. They have to follow the state's shelter guidelines in terms of, privacy and stuff like that. But they can set their own parameters around these are the people I'm going to serve. Okay, I'm going to be a family shelter. I'm going to be a shelter for people exiting corrections.
Mhm.
I'm going to be a shelter for single moms and their children. They get to set that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they have to go through a competitive funding process with the Department for Children and Families for something called HOP grants, Housing Opportunity Program grants. And they through HOP, no shelter is funded 100%. They have to do a lot of fundraising at the local level. Okay. So
I don't think I meant shelters. I meant benefits. I should not have said the word shelter because that did complicate it.
okay,
For people to be considered.
for like the general assistance program.
Yes.
Okay, so
Thank you.
for general assistance emergency housing, the legislature actually narrowed the scope of who is eligible for that 3 years ago now, I think it is. We might be coming up on our 4th year, I think. I don't have the list right here in front of me. I can get it for you. But it's essentially pregnant women, it's people with disabilities. And disability is defined as people receiving SSI, SSDI, or who can prove their disability through a medical certification. It is people with children. Yeah, I know there are witnesses, I know there are people in the room who can list them all down but
Yeah.
it's in the, budget bill every year for the
Yeah.
last 3 years. But to your question, if you are a, young person between certain ages, you may not be eligible even though you're homeless.
That was what I was.
Yeah. And it looks like Representative Pezzo has a question.
Just a real quick question.
Yeah.
So if that's the case and they're not eligible, are they required to at least refer them somewhere where they might be eligible?
They can refer them to a shelter program, one of these, we have 600 and some odd beds. So they can refer them, but, most all of our shelters are full.
And they're just for a roof over your head, there's no supportive services involved in that.
At the shelters, or you mean,
At the
no, at the
shelters.
shelters, actually, depending upon what's the specialization of that shelter, you do get access to some supportive services. But I do want to point out that we do have emergency cold weather shelters that don't have age requirements. And those are pretty much open to anybody, but the requirements that the state has set out right now has to be minus 10 degrees, for God's sakes. Anyway, I could say a lot about that.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay,
I just have one very quick question, just on a scale of 1 to 10. When you try to if I'm Joe lady on the street trying to access, like I call 211, how would you say that whole flow is going right now? Is that robust?
it's very variable is what I would say. Depends upon what day of the month that you call. It depends on what the temperature is outside. It depends if you're calling on the weekend or you're calling on the weekday. I think people have faster response times with 211, to be honest, and they cover nights and weekends. During some times in the relatively recent past, when you deal with the telephone number you call for regular state business hours, people could be online for a very long time. And of course, a lot of times people, they got limited number of minutes, they have to hang up, and the DCF does not like people to come into the regional offices to fill out an application. They want people to use the telephone, and so it's not, we can do better. Let's just say we can do better.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
We will arrange to get you back in here.
Okay.
I think this is great for the committee.
Okay,
I really appreciate it, and
I appreciate
my
your interest.
condolences,
I really do.
my condolences for what you're about to do.
Thank you. All righty, take care.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
We don't have anything more for this morning. Right? We don't, I don't.
Walkthrough? Oh, no.
No. Afternoon at 1:00, we are reconvening and we're going to have 4 bills. For 2 of them, it's simply a walkthrough. For 2 of them, well, no,
No, an
an introduction.
Oh, that's.
And for 2 of them, we're going to have a walkthrough where our legislative council will walk through these bills. They are all labor bills. One of the bills, the bill relating to mandatory retirement of college professors, which is really just bringing us into compliance with federal law. Finally, we have scheduled for possible vote today.
Intro, walkthrough, vote, all in
It's
one.
just so simple. It just felt like, let's just get it out. So it's important for us to have a quorum at 1:00. Because at 1:00 is when that first bill is scheduled. Okay,
Thank you.
so we're adjourned for this morning. We'll come back at